want to make sure my face is on the re-edited version from now on. That's my only stipulation.
It makes you laugh every time, doesn't it, mate?
It does. I love it. I absolutely love it. I really do.
Yeah. Well, welcome everyone to a sort of a little bit of a different fully loaded transfer show. Normally, we're fully loaded. Everybody's here. We've got journalists coming out of our ears wanting to be on the show. But unfortunately, we're down to the bare bones this week. Daz and Mart have got holidays and other stuff going on. Chris has chipped in the last couple of nights. Pete, we're going for 100% this week. And I'm helping to step up to I suppose the best way to describe it is it's a mini fully loaded transfer show, but it's going to be about an hour of jam-packed content, as if it would have to be fully loaded to a degree. So, Pete, I know you're not feeling very well today. You've got a bit of an ear infection, so massive dues for standing up and going ahead with the show, mate. But apart from that, how are you?
Yeah, I can only hear out of one ear, so I'll do my best to listen to what you're saying. We'll keep an eye on the chat. But obviously, of course, where there's content and where there's information and where there's Newcastle news to be brought out, we're here. This is what we do.
It is.
Mag NUFC. So, yeah, looking forward to talking all things Newcastle. Mike Gent's already on it. He's already taken the mic. Yeah, you heard what I said. I might have not heard what I said, but I did. But let's get into it. I was just
gonna say, is the E that you're having difficulty with the side that's closest to your wife, so you don't have to hear her saying asking you what job to do or something.
Oh, I'm so glad she's upstairs and she didn't hear that.
Yeah, she's
I'm
probably
not saying nothing. I'm not saying a word.
Well, look, we'll get straight on it because we've got lots to get to in this hour. And the first place that we're going to start, it's been the biggest link of the whole of since the weekend, last few days, and it's this guy, James Maddison. Now, obviously, it emerged late last night, this morning, that Leicester had turned down our second bid. Craig Hope last night was on BBC Newcastle, talking about it as well, which we'll go into a little bit more in depth shortly. He has a feeling that a deal of around 50 million guaranteed, not clauses, would see Leicester sell. But Newcastle are unlikely to do that because of FFP restrictions and their valuation of the player. He would also be wary of other clubs coming in now that a market has been set, which, to be fair, that's been something we've discussed all the way back since January with other players. When we thought there was a couple of players Newcastle had to potentially get signed in January because that window of opportunity probably wouldn't have been here in the summer, which it's proved to be the case. But regards James Maddison, Pete, do you think we're going to go in with a third and final bid and see if a compromise can be made on the transfer?
110%. I'm confident that we're going for a third. Will it be the final bid? Who knows? But the one thing I think I mentioned it on Monday on our Q&A when I did it with Chris, is that the one thing I wanted to see because I missed when it initially came out. I got a lot of tweets messages when I was away. I only saw it when I got back about the Maddison stuff. What I wanted to see is actually, is it just pie in the sky, or have we really got the intent? For me, the second bid showed our intent to actually want the player. The fact that we've gone back in again, and the fact that we only left it a couple of days to then go back in with the second bid. So that told me our intent was clear and that we really, really wanted the player. Now, do we go in with a third bid? I think we do, because we've shown our hand. Yes, the club said initially they didn't want that information coming out. They didn't want people to know that Maddison was one of their targets. And I believe from the fact of how quiet it's been, I think he's been one of their main targets in the summer. We've just not known about it. We had Pete Graves on the show, on a fully loaded transfer show a number of weeks ago, and he made the point in saying a lot of the names that we already know in the Twitter sphere, in the NUFC social media, he was aware of 1 or 2, 3 players that we'd not even known about or wasn't even heard. I believe Maddison was one of those players. And I think it's out in the open now, But I actually think that Newcastle will go back in with a third bid. And I'll be surprised, Top Man Roy, thank you for your contribution. I will be surprised if by Saturday we haven't put a third bid in. I actually fully expect over the next 48 hours for us to see that there's a third bid gone in. That's just my opinion, because I think the intent's clear that we want this player. Now, we'll talk about people's opinions. You mentioned Craig Hope. I think that's definitely a talking point right there for a couple of reasons. But a third bid, 100%. But Richie, from your perspective, because this is obviously your first show this week, and you've not really had an opportunity to talk about matters from that point of view, James Maddison. But what are your thoughts about James Maddison in general, and do you think there'll be a third bid?
For a start, I think Maddison's a fantastic side. I put it on Twitter the other day when we went in with the first bid. I just think he's an exceptional talent. He had didn't play, what was 2/3 of the season. He played, I think it was 28 games last year, Premier League games he played last year, 12 goals, 8 assists. And that's a bloody good return, mind, for an attacking midfielder. And, you look at his highlight reel that he's got. He doesn't just score tap-ins. This guy can corner, strike a ball. And I think I don't know if you saw, Pete, there was a heat map that was on Twitter the other day of James Maddison's heat map of all his shots, and every single one of them you could literally do a semicircle of 20 yards around the outside of the box, and every single one of them was in that area. And the amount that were on target as well, from that sort of distance is unbelievable. On that front, you've got to take it, that's another strength of the board. He's got that creative idea. He looks for that to try and open up defenses and stuff like that. And I think it says a lot when, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago when he broke in the England squad, and Gascoigne thought he was the one player that could really, really step up and be the same Gaza mold that what it was that he was, and could be, his successor as sort of thing, because he's got that natural ability. You can't shy away the fact, as I said, he's an England international as well, and he's another set piece taker as well. So, there's a lot of different things that I tried to go on here. And I think I think we will go in with a third bid. I think the fact that Lee Ryder reported at the weekend that Dan Ashworth had actually been to this Leicester City training ground to actually discuss the move, that shows that there's intent there and they're serious about the deal. Dan Ashworth doesn't travel all the way down from Newcastle to have face-to-face meetings if it's not serious. We'll come on to someone else as well, but there's a few different links between probably 2 or 3 different players, possibly even 4. There's a link between the 2 clubs at the minute, which obviously we'll get into it. But so there's I definitely believe that we'll go into and make another bid on that one. I think I said the other day, I think 45 million plus add-ons would probably get the deal done. Whether that's the case, obviously we don't know how much in the last deal. The rumour that it was 40 million plus add-ons up to 50 million. You start thinking, will the extra 5 million make a difference? Possibly, it could do. We're not going to pay 60 million. There's just no. We're not for someone who's got 2 years left on the contract. It's just not going to happen. But there's other little interesting things as well. Like they still owe us money for Perez as well. Do you know what I mean? They believe that we offered to write that off. Apparently, according to one of the clauses in the deal, but Leicester wanted to keep it separate because obviously they need the incoming money to do other stuff. So there's plenty of stuff going on there. But I think I wanted to throw it back to you on that, because obviously another talking point on Radio Newcastle last night was Craig Hope was actually a bit dubious about the Maddison move, because he can't see how Maddison fits into the 4-3-3 formation that Eddie Howe's developed under Newcastle so far. Everyone's bought into it. Everyone's been delivering and knows what to do in that formation. So where does he fit into that 4-3-3 formation? Does he play more of the advanced of the centre midfielders, or does he go onto the right? Or, as other people have said, the right winger thing is not going to be an out-and-out winger. He's more going to be like an inside right. And then obviously you allow Trippier a bit more of an attack in front down there. But obviously then Radio Newcastle as well today, if they've put out, should Eddie Howe change the formation to suit him or stick to the same system and play him out wide? So it's another interesting talking point. But what do you think on that, Pete?
Well, look, initially when we talked about Maddison, I said James Maddison is the. I'll be honest with you. I listened to Craig Hope on BBC Radio, and look, everybody knows Craig Hope is a fantastic journalist, a top elite level journalist, certainly for North East football. There is no doubt about it. I've spoke to Craig Hope on a number of occasions. I've been on podcasts with him, and you know what he says is very, very good. I was genuinely surprised when he actually said that he didn't understand why we were going for James Maddison. For me, it makes perfect sense why we're going for James Maddison. James Maddison, first and foremost, is an elite footballer. He's an elite footballer. For me, he's a top 6 footballer. He could play in any, and I include the likes of Man City and Liverpool in this, he could play in any of those teams. There is no doubt about it. If we got him this summer, we'd be incredibly lucky to get him. And I've had, from some of our tweets that have gone out from Loaded and myself, I've had some of the Tottenham fans that follow me come back and tweet and go on their own social medias, why are we not going in for him? Why are we not taking the punt and buying him? We should be acting now. Arsenal fans are saying the same. He is a top level player. Now, going back to the formation where he fits in, I actually believe he is perfect for that midfield 3. And I'll go back and I said for those that watched the show on Monday, the Q&A, I actually talked about Leicester, and I've watched them quite closely, obviously being from Leicester over the years and since Maddison's been there, and they traditionally play with a midfield 2. And that sometimes creates problems for their team in that they've not had a position that they've been able to set in stone and say, this is where you play, this is where I want you to play, and this is where I want you to produce your football. If you look at his career at Leicester, he's played on the left initially. He's played in the number 10 where he's supposedly his best. He's played in a midfield 2 in some games. And then more recently, going into last season, he's played on the right. So he's played everywhere. But the key to that is that wherever he's played, he's produced. He's got goals. He's got assists. He's created chances. He's been a threat. And he's done it all in so many different positions. So anyhow, I was looking at that, and he must be thinking, he's perfect for us. But I actually think he's perfect for our midfield 3. I really do. And I think he is the creative spark that we need from an attacking midfielder getting forward. He is what, if we sign him, he is what we want Joe Willock to be, ultimately, in terms of that creative spark, releasing himself, getting in late in the box, scoring on the edge of the area, creating opportunities. Bruno Guimaraes did it last season when we never expected him to do that. We've got a player that can actually do that and produce that every game in that midfield 3. And the question marks about him playing in the midfield 2 would be eradicated because you've got 3 in there. So he could be pushing himself forward to be that creative player, to support Wilson and St. Max and whoever plays on the right, and allow the likes of Joe Linton and Bruno to be combative and dirty and win the ball and protect him almost. But as what's already been said, and you've talked about it, Richie, he can play on the right-hand side, which is a position that we need to fill right now. And you made a really, really good point about Kieran Trippier, because Kieran Trippier, we saw it against Benfica a couple of times. He can get forward, and at times you don't need a right winger. Your right winger can come inside and actually sit deeper or find a different position, because you've got a wing back or a full back that is a wing back that can get up and down and create big moments. And we saw that in the game against Benfica. So really, even though he's not a traditional right winger, you could play him there and you could ask him to maybe just sit inside and become a number 10 and create those little pockets of space and just allow Trippier to bomb on. And, you know, that is the beauty of Maddison. So for all those things that I've just said, why doesn't it make sense? It makes perfect sense. He is a perfect player for Newcastle United. He really is.
The thing is, I think even if, you know, you say about the 4-3-3 formation, you know, even a subtle change to a 4-2-3-1 isn't a major difference really, because all you do is you 2 centre midfielders go perhaps a little bit narrower, and it, you know, that's where, you know, Maddison would literally just go a little bit more further as well. And he's that then becomes that perfect link up between the midfield and the attack and three. Whoever goes on the right, whether it's Almiron or the Murphy or the Try Fraser there, or ASM goes on there, or whoever's on the left, it makes no difference. There's a place in that team for for Maddison at Newcastle all day long in 3 different positions that we've actually discussed there, whether it be as a number 10, as a right winger, or the inside right forward, and obviously allow Trippier to get down there. But the links going to Leicester don't just stop with Maddison. Obviously, we believe we're going to go back there, but it's still going on about the fact that Harvey Barnes is there as well with Ekrem Kone. Yeah, Newcastle are monitoring the condition of Leicester's 24-year-old English player Harvey Barnes. Now, there's been a lot of comparison between who would you take out of Maddison or Barnes. There's been loads of comparisons with Maddison and Paqueta as well over the last few days. But, obviously because this link's come about over the last couple of hours again, as we mentioned before, Dan Ashworth was down at the Leicester City training ground over the weekend. We don't know what deals they've been talking about. We've had Tielemans linked at some point to Newcastle as well. There's a rumour going around that, which we'll discuss a bit more about possibly Leicester being interested in Dubravka because Kasper Schmeichel's is just left to go to Nice. But the interesting thing, and I specifically got this tweet out there because it just shows how good a player Harvey Barnes is that over the last 3 seasons, over the last 3 seasons, only 6 players have scored more than 20 goals and 20 Premier League assists. It's Kevin De Bruyne, Salah, Harry Kane, Fernandes, Heung-min Son, and Harvey Barnes. Yeah. Now, I must admit, I don't know if you were, Pete, I was surprised by that. I wouldn't have put him in that echelon with that top 5. Would you really? You don't think him as that creative a player and sometimes possibly as dynamic as that, and game changing.
You know what, Richie, you and me wouldn't have been the only one that was surprised by that. Leicester fans were surprised by that because obviously, I'm from Leicester and I talked to a lot of Leicester fans and I've had a lot of messages of anger and frustration and agitation about the Maddison deal and obviously the Harvey Barnes link that's still there. And a lot of Leicester fans didn't realise how productive he was last season. And that's the surprising thing is that they don't see Harvey Barnes' worth. Now, a lad that's 22, 23 years old, I think, if I'm right in thinking 23 years old.
He's 24 now, I think, Pete.
Oh, okay, just turned 24. So yeah. He's in a position now. England international, has played England international. Gareth Southgate likes him a lot. If it wasn't for a couple of nasty injuries this season, he probably would have been and played more in the England squad. And I think that he is a player, again, that would take us to the next level. He's a tremendous talent. What I like about him, and there's not many players that do this, and this is why sometimes I hang my hat on Alan Saint-Maximin, is that they're direct. We don't have direct players, enough of them in the Premier League, that gets the ball and wants to run at players and wants to commit players from the opposition. And he gets the ball and he just drives. He's fast. He's deceptively fast. And he has a real knack of scoring those Henry-like goals, coming in off the left and just bending them into the far corner. Yeah, has a real knack of being able to do that. But he's got that infectious nature of just, being able to get the ball and going, you know what, I'm going to beat you. And then he gets the ball and says, I'm going to beat you again. And he'll do it time and time again. And he makes that right back over the 90 minutes work. They don't want it's a fullback's nightmare. He is a fullback's nightmare. He does not let up, and that's why he's saw highly by Leicester. This is why England have picked him up, and this is why I think it'd be a tremendous signing. Again, it comes back to, and I don't know what your thoughts on this, Richie. It goes back to the point is that all of what I've talked about is that he plays on the left. So what are we going to do? With the likes of Saint-Maximin, do we shift him over to the right? Do we create a new position for Harvey Barnes and go and do that on your favoured foot on the right-hand side and create moments that way? That's my only question, and that's my only issue with Harvey Barnes, is where does he fit into this team?
Yeah.
So that's a discussion point in itself.
Yeah, you're right, because you look at the positions that Newcastle need, and it's like, it's a striker, right winger, and potentially number 10. If that's the way you really want to look at it. And as you said, Harvey Barnes is favoured on the left-hand side. So if you were to go for the natural need, you automatically look at James Maddison, because he ticks more of those boxes. But then, as you've just said, does that allow, if you're looking to go for Harvey Barnes, does that make you start to think, look, do we, something you've mentioned a few times, and I have as well, about, switching Maxi onto the right-hand side? The amount of times we've seen, he hasn't got that threat of cut inside and, and trying to bend one, which, to be fair, we discussed quite a lot last year, wasn't really working for him as much as it had been in the past. He was scuffing a lot of his shots, and we mentioned about, possibly because of the pace of how quickly he runs, was he, able to get a good connection on the shot because he's traveling at such speed? So he wasn't able to get his shot away properly. Whereas, going back to how we mentioned, we use it a few times, the example of that opening day game against West Ham last year. We talked in the first 5 minutes, so Maxim cut down that right-hand side, and that lovely ball he put in for Callum Wilson when we took the lead straight away early on in the game. I just love the fact when the ASM does that. Don't get me wrong, I love the unpredictability side that he can create when he's on the left-hand side and he drives at players. He can drive at them on the other side as well. Yes, he'd probably be a little bit more predictable getting down, trying to go towards the byline. Or if he was to cut, he's going to be more looking for the assist rather than letting the shot away, because obviously he's going onto his unfavoured foot. But if you're going with pace down there, and you've got people like Trippier, possibly on the overlap as well, or as I said, he's quick enough to get down himself, he's going to cause a lot of problems. But say, for example, we went for Maddison, we leave ASM on the left. The thing what I think we've got to look at in regards to ASM is, you add another quality cog into that attacking third, and you're going to see ASM have a lot more space. How many times did we say, not just last season, the season before, where everybody knew that he was our danger man. So you would see him double team, triple teamed at some stages, and you neutralised ASM, and you wouldn't. That was Newcastle's threat gone. You saw when Bruno came into the side, the second half of the season, that freed up a little bit of space for ASM, because there was another, creative, quality player on the pitch who was something to be worried about. You look at how many goals he got from coming through, from attacking from midfield, because you had people out of position who were trying to deal with ASM. Now you have Bruno in the midfield, and you had someone like Maddison to go there as well, and you've still got Sam Max on the pitch. It's a defender's nightmare. You don't know who you're going to have to mark, because they're capable of just skipping past a player and that's it, gone. So, do you know what? I think for me personally, if I had to choose between Harvey Barnes and Maddison, I think because of the need and the natural fit, for me, it would be Maddison. But, if we went down the Barnes, and, I'm not going to turn my nose up having a quality player like Harvey Barnes in the team.
That's the beauty of all of this, is that, you're looking at those players, you're looking at Maddison and Barnes that have been linked. You could throw in Paqueta in there, and he's still in there, and I'm sure we'll cover him at some point. You're looking at 3 outstanding quality players that are going to improve our attacking quality. Yes, it might not be the striker that I think everybody wants, and Craig Hope talked about it last night. He said, obviously, he agreed when they said earlier on before the end of the season that they were going to put all their budget into finding a striker, and he was all for that. That's great. But ultimately, it's very clear that they are saying that Callum Wilson is going to be their main man. Now, whether they find a replacement or not is another thing. But what you need for a Callum Wilson, and I don't think this has been talked about enough. We've talked about it on Loaded Mag NUFC, but it hasn't been talked about enough, is that it's all right having a Callum Wilson up there that can nick a goal here and there, but you need someone that's going to feed him. Every striker needs feeding. Alan Shearer didn't become a record goal scorer in Premier League or Newcastle history without being fed, with the likes of Speed, Dyer, Solana.
I think, do you know what, a prime example of that, right? You go back to when Newcastle first got into the Premier League, and you had that combination of Andy Cole and Peter Beardsley. The amount of times that Peter Beardsley, right, put stuff on a plate in and around the, the 6-yard box, the penalty spot area for Andy Cole. Andy Cole just had to literally just put the ball in the back of the net. Peter Beardsley did everything. He created everything. He made Andy Cole, in my opinion. He made him the striker he was, and having that connection and, so which sometimes doesn't come, but, takes a lot of work. You could just see because of the type of player that Peter Beardsley was, he had that instinct. So he always knew where Andy Cole was going to be. And that's what you're right. Callum Wilson's got that capability to finish well. He showed these finishes against Athletic on Saturday. It was a good finish. We got the ball in between the defenders. He showed his strength to hold them off, and it was a good finish under pressure. But as you said, you've got to feed him to get him into that position. And that's what you're right. That's what we've been lacking is feeding Callum Wilson. He's not the sort of player who's going to create something probably himself. He might be able to occasionally, but he's not going to be able to do it week in, week out.
Yeah. And look, we've both said exactly the same thing. Like we know it from a footballer's perspective. You're a coach. I've been a coach. We've played the game. David Cook said he's always said the same. Regardless who striker is, you need someone creative to be able to supply them. We've gone way back to the likes of Alan Shearer, but you go through all the years. Those strikers that score the most goals, they get supplied by the best players. And you have a Bruno Guimaraes, and you have a James Maddison, you have a Kieran Trippier who's got great delivery. You've got Matty Target that's got great delivery. You've got Alan St-Maximin that's improving his productivity. We've seen it over pre-season. You've got all those players. You can guarantee that Callum Wilson is going to lap them up, but you need that creativeness all the way through the team. We can't just rely on, like we did years ago with Johan Cabaye being our only creative spark, or Hatem Ben Arfa producing a moment of magic. It's not like that. Football's changed. You need creativity all over the pitch. And where we're going and where we want to go, which is heading top 6, top 4, eventually, hopefully challenging for the title, those top teams have creativity all over the pitch. Every position across the midfield, the forward line, even the fullbacks. You look at Liverpool, Trent and Robertson, they get just as many assists as the likes of Salah and Mane when he was there, and Firmino. They are just as productive, and we need that across the team. So, yeah, again, I go back to the point before we move on. Like Maddison, Maddison being a shock or a surprise or a question mark, not for me. For me. It's a no-brainer. I do want to say really quickly, Dougie Morris, thank you for becoming a member. Really, really do appreciate it. I know we've had some obviously some super chats and stuff in there, but really appreciate you becoming part of the Loaded family. So thank you for that. 100%.
I think the next bit we would have talked about, because obviously we said about Leicester, there's a few different things going on, and obviously we've mentioned Maddison, we've mentioned Barnes. Now, another interesting one tonight was obviously our everyone follows him for Beta Ramona confirming that Kasper Schmeichel has got a Nice for $1 million fee, which, to be fair, I think that's a pretty good deal. A Danish international goalkeeper for £1 million. That's a cracking deal for Nice. And obviously Leicester confirmed it shortly after. Thank you for a fantastic. He has been a good servant for Leicester, and he probably, when he moved to Leicester, he wouldn't have dreamed of some of the things he's won at Leicester. Let alone a Premier League title, FA Cups, Charity Shields, and stuff like that. So he's probably achieved more than what he imagined he would. But this is the thing where things become interesting now, because Leicester don't have a natural number one. They've got a couple of number twos who are going to vie for the number one position. Now, a lot of the rumours came out over the weekend that according to Craig Cope on Magpie 24/7 here, when they covered it, that Craig Cope has said that Leicester have shown an interest in Martin Dubravka. Could he be used in any deal for James Maddison? Possibility, we don't know. Or it could be, as we discussed before, Leicester want to keep different deals separate due to, having bringing money in, etc., etc. But Dubravka stated he loves the fact that he's got competition coming in because you need to be kept on your toes. Nothing has really changed. Competition is good for everyone. I've said that many times. Everywhere I have been before, I have had to fight for my position. I did everything in pre-season in my eyes. But the issue we've had discussed is we've got someone in Nick Pope coming in who's an England international who isn't going to really want to sit on the bench here. And yes, it's good that you have two quality number ones in your squad, but Leicester haven't got any. And with it being a World Cup year, remember Slovakia have qualified for this World Cup as well. Martin Dubravka is going to want to be playing first team football. He's not going to be wanting to warm the bench for Newcastle while Nick Pope is wearing the number 1 shirt and he comes on and perhaps the Carabao Cup or whatever like that. So for me, this is a deal that could really, really happen. What do you think about this? What about Dubravka possibly being either part of the deal for Maddison or Barnes or however when we go to, or as a standalone deal where he goes to Leicester for a fee?
It's a really interesting one, and it's one that I've kind of flip-flopped really. I've changed my mind about what's going to happen with Martin Dubravka because if you'd have asked me 6 weeks ago, I would have said when I think the links were coming through, I would have said Dubravka will stay. I think Dubravka will be happy to stay at the club and grow with the club and fight for his place. But the more I see it now, is that the more I actually see a determination in Dubravka to want to continue to play as a number 1 and at the highest level. I think we've become accustomed to the likes of Woodman and Darlow that are just happy to play second fiddle. It's very, very clear. Thank you, Andrew, top man, becoming part of the Loaded family. I think it's very clear that they were very comfortable at just being part of the furniture. I get the opinion and from some of the comments that Dubravka's put out, and we've heard from his agent about him, wanting to be a number 1 and playing regular. That actually, I think this Saturday is going to be really important. I think at 2 p.m. when that first team sheet comes out, and if we see Pope, and I expect Pope to be number 1, if we see him at number 1, I expect this time next week for there to be at least some movement on that situation. Because if you're a goalkeeper, if you're a player, and you're fighting with someone for one position, and you start the season on the bench, that gives you an idea of what the manager thinks. It gives you an idea that the manager thinks that actually he's the guy that I'm going to go with, and you're going to be second fiddle. And the more I'm seeing it, the more I'm watching, the more I'm hearing, Dubravka doesn't want to be number 2. And, to go on to your other point, Rich, about Dubravka and the potential for Leicester, I think it makes sense. Like I mentioned on Monday that Leicester have been linked. It was clear last week that Schmeichel was going to go. The fact that it's been announced today, it was quite clear that they needed to go. Both Schmeichel and Vardy are the 2 last great high earners at Leicester City from the Premier League title winning season. The one that's remaining is Albrighton. He's not on as much money as Vardy and Schmeichel. And Schmeichel has been suspect, and a lot of fans have questioned him. Leicester fans have questioned him the last couple of years and questioned whether he should still be number 1. So they wanted him off the wage bill. They needed him gone. Martin Dubravka coming in brings in immediate experience. You could get another 2 or 3 years out of him, but the key to it is that you're not paying a huge fee. I mentioned on Monday about Albert Lafont from Nantes, who is an extremely talented young goalkeeper. Lee's talked about him on a couple of Fully Loaded transfer shows as a goalkeeper to look out for. I think there was a question in the chat a number of weeks ago, and he mentioned Albert Lafont as that goalkeeper. Leicester have been linked with him, but actually the Dubravka deal makes sense. To tie them over for a couple of years, there's no better goalkeeper than Martin Dubravka. He's still Premier League quality at the level that Leicester are at. It's just that we're going in a different direction. And if it means that Maddison comes in, as much as I loved Martin Dubravka, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this, Richie, as much as I love Martin Dubravka, if it means we get James Maddison walking through the door, I'd take it. I would.
I think that's probably one of the most sensible things that anyone's ever said on any YouTube Newcastle channel at all. You only have one number one, and you've got an England international. They could be that number one. You know what I mean? You don't want, another potential number one to sit on the bench. If he can be part, a make way in getting someone of James Maddison's quality and caliber to be, a game changer in our first. He ups the level completely, of our squad. He's an upgrade of what we've already got, and that's what we keep saying. People turn around and say, "Oh, such and such has been linked," but I wouldn't have really been interested. But then you turn on and put it this way: is he better than what we've got? And that's what you've got to look for with anybody that Newcastle are looking to bring in. Is he better than what we've got? What we've also got to remember is if someone turns around and says, I'm not a fan of him or whatever, what you've got to remember is look at the coach that we've got in at the moment. Okay? Look at the wonders that he has done with Joe Linton, what he's done with Sean Longstaff since the end of last season, what he's done with Miggy Almiron since the end of last season. He's brought Shaw back in, and how Shaw's been, he regressed under Steve Bruce as well. He's getting the best out of all the players that are in that squad and available for selection. He's going to bring players in. So yes, they might have fallen out of favour wherever they've been before or whatever. That doesn't mean he can't get more out of them and take Newcastle to another level again. But for me, Dubravka, if it was part of a make way for Maddison, all day long, Pete. But as I said, it's interesting. Do you think that if the Dubravka, say that obviously Kasper Schmeichel going, as I mentioned to you off air before, do you reckon that could be the deal that starts the dominoes falling on other potential moves?
Yeah, I do. I think Leicester will be happy that they've got Schmeichel off the wage bill right now, so that will free up some wages and some things to play around with. But ultimately, Leicester need money to spend. Now, with Schmeichel going, there's a lot of Leicester fans, and Chris on our Battleground Europe last night from Leicester Till I Die podcast talked about, from a Leicester perspective, a lot of the fans think that Ward and their third choice goalkeeper are just going to fight it out this season, and that's what Leicester are going to go with. For me, it doesn't make sense because neither of them are at the level that Leicester want to go to. So Leicester will invest. They have to invest in a goalkeeper. Now, they also need to invest in other areas. And I talked about this again last night in a couple of other shows. Brendan Rodgers is a manager that loves to buy. He likes to buy players. He likes to turn over his squads on a regular basis. Top man, Jordy Mick, thank you for your contributions, mate. He likes to turn over his squad of players. So he's going to want money to spend. Clearing wages is great, but it's not enough. And this is where the transfers come in. And this is where I do see, and I think I agree with you, Richie, 100%, is that it could be the domino effect in terms of, right, the keeper's gone, we need to replace the keeper. What we've just talked about, and I think what we both agree on, and lots in the chat agree with, is that if Dubravka comes in as part of the Maddison deal, that solves the goalkeeping position, but it also gives them the money to be able to start then improving their team, which is what the Leicester fans want more than anything. They want players coming in. So if they get Dubravka in, even for a season or two, and takes him to 35, and that allows them to get the money in for Maddison to go and buy players. I touched on it on Monday. Adenoma Lookman, if I'm pronouncing that right, I apologise if I'm not. But Lookman had a great loan spell with them last season, and the fans loved him. Brendan Rodgers loved him. He wanted to stay. He was meant to have signed for them 5 weeks ago, but because they've not had the finances to do it, they've not been able to. Now, he was close. Before I went away, he was very close to signing for Atalanta at some point last week. Whether that deal's done or not, I'm not too sure, but he's now looking elsewhere. Leicester need money in order to get players like him in to improve their squad. So this is where potentially we could see some movement. And this is where it goes back to the point. I believe if in the next 48 hours a bid comes in for Maddison, I believe Leicester will seriously consider it, especially if it goes above the 50 million mark. If we're then talking, if we're talking finances anywhere within the between 50 and 60 million mark, even if it's the lower 50s, I think there's a deal or a high chance it could be accepted.
Yeah, I'm agreeing. As I said on Twitter the other day, I still think a deal about 45 million with add-ons. I think that's a realistic figure as well. 2 years on his contract as well, and we know Leicester are a very hard company to deal with. They try and milk every single penny out of any club. Still how they paid what they did for Harry. Man United paid for Harry Maguire. I still can't believe they paid that much, and they did well to get it. And I know that Chris mentioned it on Battleground last night. They like to get every single penny, but just because Newcastle are getting the Newcastle tax and we've got that money doesn't mean we're going to be daft about it. Do you know what I mean? It's like as Eddie Howe said today, we've got a small pool of players that we're looking at. We know who we're looking at. We know who they are. We know the cost. And what we'll do is we get to a point where we turn and say we won't pay enough. We'll move on to the other one. But the good thing is all the targets are all of a similar quality. They all improve what we've already got. So on that basis, that 45 minute add-ons, I think that's where we need to be, sort of thing. But
did you think those Howe comments was a clear message to James Maddison? Because I thought they were. I thought it was kind of a little underhand comments, as if to say we really want you. The fact that he mentioned we're only looking at a small pool of players, a small pool of talented players that we really want. If James Maddison was watching that, and I guarantee he was, because he's a social media and it's in a follower of all football, he is that type of guy. He would have listened to those comments, and he would have known from what Eddie Howe says that they want me. They want me.
But not just that. I think there's the link. He's got the same agency as Kieran Trippier and Dan Burn, so we know we've got a working relationship with them. They would not have spoke to Newcastle if James Maddison didn't want that deal either. Do you know what I mean? It's literally, for me, it's literally getting this everything negotiated, sorted, and get him in as quick as we can. It's probably pushing it now realistically for do anything for the start of this weekend. You're probably looking before Brighton. That's probably going to be realistic, I would say. But with it, Newcastle, transfers, anything can happen. Watch this space. It's nice to be in this position where we're talking about bids and stuff going. Look back 12 months ago, we were struggling for to get a fee together for Joe Willock, and we couldn't even get 1 million for Hamza Chowdhury. And now we'll look where we're at. So look, whether people are turning down and having a go at the owners because they're not paying this and that, look, just think we were where we were 12 months ago. Look at what we're trying to do now. We're building slowly. We're not going to pay over the odds. We can't do a Man City because of, there were no regulations and restrictions tying you at what you could spend or what you could lose. And I know everyone's getting sick of FFP here in the ins and outs. You couldn't just blow money left, right, and centre. You can't do it anymore. So you've got to do it slowly. And the way we're doing it's the right way. We're not going to be hauled over hot coals, and pay ridiculous amounts of money. They're going to do it sensibly, and that's what we want. But going on to the next one. Now, this one is someone who keeps coming up. We've discussed him numerous times. Every single one of the panel has always had an opinion on this guy. And it surfaced again this morning. There was a couple of different little, sides to it. There was some turnaround saying that the news that broke this morning, was true, and that, Newcastle have dodged a bullet for this guy. Now, our very own Jordan Cronin from Newcastle World as well, but also part of this show every single week normally. He's actually injured his knee in training, as reported out for 3 months. Newcastle retained this and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but suspect today's news will bring an end to that for now. Now, for me, I would hope that news has gone full stop and that he's not going to be part of Newcastle. And Newcastle aren't looking at him because, for me, 60 million, the rumours are getting quoted that's what they want from him. No, not a cat and hell's chance. Am I paying 60 million for Dominic Calvert-Lewin? He's the biggest waste of space going. He had one good start of the season 2 seasons ago. Was pretty much all injured last year. Not for me. I know we've discussed this before, but he can stay down in Liverpool. He can go and do his GQ magazine, shoots and stuff like that. When your teammates are all in the trenches trying to get out of. A relegation scrap last year and stuff. And I know we've touched on this before about we don't mind players going off and doing what they want to do off the pitch, but not. There's a time and a place for me, and a time and a place when you're in a relegation battle. That's when you really see the real character of a player. And for someone to be going and doing gentlemanly quarterly spread in ridiculous attire, but I don't know if that's just me being the age I am now or whatever. But you know, I don't know on that one. But for me, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, it's a norm for me. But as the reason why I said about the rumours was because there was a lot of Everton fans actually turning around saying that this supposed injury to his knee was a smokescreen for a bid coming from Newcastle. Now, I don't believe that's the case. What were your thoughts on that when, obviously Jordan both got news this morning, but also about the rumours from Everton fans coming out that it could potentially be a smokescreen?
I didn't think it was a smokescreen for Newcastle. I'll be honest, I've always kind of kept tight lip on Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but I'm not a massive fan of him. I wouldn't have wanted him to come to Newcastle. I think, being honest, this injury is probably a blessing in disguise for Newcastle, because I think Eddie Howe is a big fan. And actually, I think Graham Bailey, who came on from 90 Minute, talked about how he was of the impression and the understanding that Eddie Howe really wants Dominic Calvert-Lewin more than any other striker out there. And he was the one that was kind of pushing the boat to try and make that deal done. For me, he's not worth anything more than 25 million at all. The dress and how he gets on and what he does outside of football, I'm not really interested in, but he hasn't done enough on the pitch for me. I talked about this at the back of last season when the Full Early Transfer Show started. If you want someone to stand up and be counted, you go to someone like Richarlison or Anthony Gordon, because when the chips were down for Everton last year, those two players stood up for Everton and made the difference. That's why Everton is still in the Premier League, purely for those two players. They made the difference. Dominic Calvert-Lewin had plenty of chances and failed and didn't do it enough in order to prove that he was of that level of 30, 40, 50, 60 million pounds transfer. So I'm glad, and that means that deal isn't going to happen now. With the news, so that kind of answered the question for the news of him being linked to Newcastle. I didn't necessarily believe that for a second. The other bit, in terms of his injury, is that massively hampers Everton. It really does. And I'm all here for it. I've got to be honest, because they got lucky last season to stay in this league, and it doesn't mean that they're going to get relegated if they'll try and sign someone and push someone over the line. But I think Everton are in for a really tough season. There's a few in the chat that are saying the same. Everton are in for a really tough season. And they'll probably be kicking themselves right now that when the likes of Newcastle and one or two others came in for Dominic Calvert-Lewin, they'll be kicking themselves that they didn't accept the deal. Because look, he's had an injury-ravaged season. You can say it was a one-off, but this injury right now proves that it's not a one-off. He's going to miss the first 3 months of the season. He's effectively throwing his England spot out the window for the World Cup because he's not going to be ready for it if he's out for 3 months. And he's cut out a chunk of his season. Question marks are going to be laid at his door now of whether he's good enough, even at 25 years old. So, good thing for us. We can look in different directions. I'm sure there's one or two that we'll look at as potential options, striker kind of backups or replacements for the likes of Callum Wilson. But all good for me, because for me, I have never been a big Dominic Calvert-Lewin fan. I know Daz is also someone that isn't a Dominic Calvert-Lewin fan. He's been more obvious and open about it. I've been kind of like zip shut, keeping quiet. It's the first time I kind of come forward with it. But yeah, I've never been a fan, and I know Daz will be jumping for joy. News, there's no doubt about it.
I think the interesting thing, before we move on to a few questions from the viewers, is, and it's something that Craig Court mentioned again, and I hate going back to Craig Court, but we know how switched on he is in regards to Newcastle stuff, is can Newcastle take this as a warning that what happens if something similar happens to Callum Wilson? You know, he mentioned in that interview again last night, and you know, touch wood, you never want anything to happen to any player getting serious injured and stuff like that. But he mentioned about Callum Wilson possibly tweaking a hamstring on Saturday because it might refocus Newcastle's, transfer, for a striker, which is a real, has always been a real need for a long time because we've never really had a backup for him. So, keeping Wilson fit, but looking at Dominic Calvert-Lewin and saying, oh, you know what, they're a bit screwed now, that we could be in the same sort of stuff with Wilson. You never know, it could switch, looking forward after the Maddison or whoever will go for who could be next on the list. And I think all Newcastle fans are still hoping that we do bring a striker in, or at least someone who can, a winger that could potentially play as a striker as well, if something was to happen to Wilson. But you said there were some questions that you wanted to get to, Pete.
Definitely, there's been a lot that have come through. So great ones, but some comments that have come in before. Ian Barron, who's a massive
happy birthday, mate.
Happy 48th birthday to you today. Hope you had a fantastic day. You've been spoiled, and look, me and Richie massively appreciate the fact that you've taken a little bit of time out on your birthday to come and spend it with the Lodi family to talk NUFC. So have a fantastic day on us, and loads in the chat have already shared their best wishes to you. So massive thanks to that. Talking about so Ish NUFC had mentioned, Sean said second bid was 39.8 million with Perez payments written off against the deal. Leicester want to keep both deals separate as they need money up front. Me and Rich talked about that again on the show tonight. Wanted 60 million. We started at 40 million. What are your thoughts about that, Richie?
That's what we said. We've already, as I said, we've touched on it already. They are desperate for the money up front, and as I said, I still think 45 million plus add-ons is the deal to be made on that. And then obviously, if they want to pay us the Perez money later on, that's fair enough. You never know, we might get some money back for Dubravka, which we've also talked about as well.
Yeah, I haven't really asked you yet. What, as a ballpark figure, what do you think, in your opinion, Newcastle need to go to? Because obviously we know that they want 60 million. Where what they want is not necessarily what they might get. But what do you think is not just a realistic valuation of Maddison, but what do you think Newcastle may need to go to? And this might include add-ons to get the deal done.
I still think 50 million is the highest you can go. I think that's I would say I still think 45 million tops if it was for cash, and then obviously add-ons to take you to 50 or over 50. I can't see us paying the extra 5 million cash then add-ons, because then you're pretty much then paying 60 roughly anyway. So no, I think 50 million including add-ons is there or thereabouts. I think that's the top whack. I think it's for 2 years on a contract. I think it's a fair price. 60 million for me is over the top. To me, I would, you look at Grealish went to Man City for 100 million last year. Now, for me, that was ridiculous. There's no way you're trying to tell me that James Maddison is half the player what Grealish is. If you go on off valuations, you know what I mean? I don't think, for me, I would always rather have James Maddison than Grealish personally. I think he's a harder worker. Yeah, he's a similar sort of person off the pitch. He likes to have his, go out and with his mates and stuff like that. But you don't see him having the issues that Jack Grealish has off the, we've seen quite a lot. Newcastle fans saw the Man City celebration for winning the league when he basically took the piss out of Miggy. You wouldn't see it. I don't think you wouldn't see James Maddison doing that sort of thing. Yeah, he's a bit of a lad about, and I think we've mentioned this about James Maddison. You hate playing him because obviously there's a lot of shithousery and his stuff. We look at the dive he did against us when we were down at Leicester for the penalty, and we were in uproar about it. How it wasn't a penalty. He dived, it was blatant, and they still gave the penalty for it. But if the book was on the other foot and he was doing that for Newcastle, we'd love him. But that's the thing. Maddison's just, for me, there's no way he is half the, I think 50 million is a perfect thing for him. Grealish is probably, double that price, is nowhere near. So for me, as I said before, I think 45 to 50 million, either 45 including add-ons or 50, thereabouts with add-ons for me.
Yeah. The question you've got to ask is, if Man City have paid 100 million for Jack Grealish, how much is Bruno worth? you know what I mean? Like, even in 6 months, and you can't even argue whether he's going to have a similar season next season. He might not do it every single week because it's over a 38 game season. But if he even produces sort of 60% of what he did this season over a course of a season, he's going to be there are journalists out there that are already thinking that Bruno Guimaraes is going to be in the team of the season. That's how much people rate him, and people are watching him and keeping an eye on him. And it wouldn't surprise me 100% that he's in the team of the year because of how good he is. And you just look at some of the prices that people are paying, and you think it is absolutely crazy. But yeah, some other questions. A good question here from Leon S, member of the channel. What do you think the club's internal goal for this season is? Interesting that 3 of our European opposition finished 8th in their respective leagues. Makes me think 8th is the internal acceptable. Great question there. But what do you think about that?
Do you know what? I think it's, if anyone that missed it, go back and have a look at last night's show, Battleground Europe, where we had the fans on from Leicester, Villa, Wolves, and West Ham. Really informative, and it was sensible views from those guys as well. And they all thought we were possibly just outside of going for Europe this year. They were possibly thinking anywhere between 8th and 10th. Now, for me, I think 8th is very achievable, and I don't think it's not out the realms of possibility that a Conference League place isn't beyond our means. I think our mate Jordan, he did an article, I think it was yesterday or Monday, that says the data experts had put Newcastle finishing, I think it was it 12th or something like that? Yeah. It was, and you think, hold on, we gave everyone a 14-game head start last year, and we still finished 11th. We had the second half of the season, we were the 3rd best form team in the Premier League. Now I had this discussion with the Ben today because he was asking us who we should put in his fantasy team, and I said, I was saying you've got to look at you've got to seriously consider Newcastle defensively now. Now we discussed it, and he says, "Well, why do I need to look for Newcastle?" So what you've got to remember is, right, we conceded 19 goals in 20 games from the second half of the season in the league. But 10 of them came in 2 games.
Yeah.
So, you take off them. So Newcastle's conceded 10 goals in 17 games. It's been a long, long time since we've had a defensive record like that. Yeah. A long, long time. We've been used to winning games by the odd goal or something like that, or, having heavy defeats against us and stuff like that. And yeah, you probably will still get the odd heavy defeat, which it proved. I think the Man City one, they're a good team. We know they are. Did it sort of flatter them? It did, really. That they scored 2 goals in stoppage time. You look at the Spurs game where we lost 5-1. We were in that game. One silly mistake after the second half, soon the second half, and Newcastle just, like, the heads went. And even in Eddie House, that was totally out of character. So if you look at the rest of the games on there, there's no reason why we can't be going for 8th as a minimum. In my opinion, I don't know what you think on that, Pete.
No, I agree. I think we were always certainly with goal difference, because I think we finished on something like -18, and that was predominantly because of obviously those 2 big heavy defeats, but also before under the previous manager. Now, if I'm Eddie Howe, I'm setting my individual players' targets, but on top of that, I'd be saying, right, as a team, as a club, we need to be in the plus for goal difference. I don't think I've seen that since the Championship season. And even before that, you can go years but back when we're finished with a plus goal difference. That should be our target, is scoring more goals than we concede. And the way in which we finished last season should give us confidence that we're going to do it again. And when you add Sven Botman to that, when you add a fit Kieran Trippier to that, who's going to play week in, week out, when you've got a comfortable, embedded Matt Target into that defence, that just fills me with a lot of confidence.
Especially you're going the Kieran Trippier thing. And I actually mentioned this fact to my son because I was saying I'd be putting Kieran Trippier in my team all day long. He's set pieces. He can create assists as well. But out of those 19 games in the second half of the season, he missed 14 of them himself through injury. So how does that make, if we had that much of a good defensive record with Kraft and Manquillo at right back, what's it going to be like when you've got an England international at right back? It's going to be even better because that extra leadership is there as well.
Exactly. It just means that there is experience, there's know-how, there's quality of football, and it just means that in real tricky situations where we may have fallen short earlier on in the season, in certain games, I'll go back to the Southampton game at home where really we should have won that quite comfortably. We were the worst side, to be fair, but again, a team that were poor. We were poorer for most of that game, scored in the last minute, but weren't able to see it through. An experienced backline like what we've got now doesn't allow that to happen. We don't allow ourselves to throw away games like we did away at Watford. I was there last season. Sean Longstaff scored a fantastic goal. We dominated for the majority of that game, and then we allowed Watford to just waltz back in with one just half decent corner, and they're back in the game and maybe should have even won it. Games like that we see out and we get 3 points after that, and we don't take just a point away from it. Villa away from home, it was an absolute shambles of a performance, certainly defensively. We don't allow that to happen this season. You look at all of those games and we go into those games, and not just us, oppositions go into those games worried about Newcastle. So they're not just thinking, yeah, we attack and eventually we'll break them down. And once we score the first goal, like they've done under the previous manager, like when we score the first goal, we win the game because they don't know how to attack. It's not like that anymore. And there'll be games next season that will really kind of take to the opposition and will cause a lot of problems. So really intrigued to see how that one comes about. But in and around that 8th position, I'd be very happy with. If we got Conference League football after this season, what a season that's been, going from relegation battlers to Conference League and playing in Europe. I take that.
You know what? I think it's the point. I think someone asked Dan Lawless last night was, would you take winning the conference as a over finishing in the top 6 for Europa League players? And he went yes, because it's a trophy for a start, which all of us would be looking to do. And to be fair, there were some good teams in that Conference League last year. It's how you approach the tournament going forward. But if you win that, if you come 8th, and if we get 8th, and then say, for example, you've got 2 ways that you can approach it. Do you then kick on to automatically try and get in the top 6 or however as a progression? Or would you take finishing 8th again the following season, but winning the conference final and getting Europa place that way in a trophy? There's so many different options that you can look at. And this is where obviously we'll see where priorities will go. Is progression classed as just where you finish season on season on season? Or is it, do you take other things into it, whereas you still finish 8th, but you win the FA Cup or whatever? Now, if we any trophy that we win into progression, we haven't won a domestic trophy since 1955. So, and we haven't made a major trophy since 1969. So there's, that's everyone would be happy with that, full stop. Any Newcastle fan would be happy. But it was interesting to say that he would like to win it rather than finish slightly higher. So I think 8's, fantastic. And as I said, the conference is not out of possibility. And if we were to get that, I think you will rejoice to this time next year. It opens up the market as well to selling the project, probably at an advanced stage as well.
The one thing I'll add to that, and I don't remember. I remember thinking it and maybe not saying it because it's probably because Wolves, Villa, and Leicester were at each other's throats, throwing comments at each other and go mad. If you haven't watched that show, watch the show, because at times I was just cracking up with laughter. It was hilarious. The rivalry, all in good taste, by the way, but it was just the rivalry, the comments between, you know, Wolves, Leicester, Villa were just fantastic. Rich, Little Dan, and Chris were brilliant, and obviously, as Richie's already said earlier, Dan Lawless is fantastic, super knowledgeable on football. Definitely give that one a watch. But the one thing I'll say, and we talked about Europe, and you mentioned it earlier, European football now is, I think, is big and is better than it ever has been. There are quality teams through all the competitions. You just mentioned it a second ago. Even in the Europa Conference, you've got teams like Napoli. You've got teams like Roma that ended up winning the competition. You've got really good quality teams in those competitions across the board. That's in the Europa Conference. We're not even looking at the Europa League, and then you're going into the Champions League. I think any European competition now that you win, you're going to have to play against very, very good sides in order to win. You're going to get some sides that you may walk over or see as minnows in the competition. But I think now more than ever, European competitions are the place to be. And I think that's why Dan was talking about winning a European competition. It's a European trophy. Like, you can say you've won a European trophy for your club. That is a big feat, like, regardless of what anyone says. And I just think that for me is a big seller. And look, all of us Newcastle fans, you know, we love European nights, whether they're at St James's Park or away from home. We would love them to come back. Everyone saw the buzz about the Benfica game and how much it meant to everyone that we were playing the likes of Benfica. We want those games back, and we want those games not just in Benfica. We want them at St James's Park, where we can create the atmosphere and the banners, and Wharf lads can do their thing, and we can really create those moments. And you know what? The media want it too, because Newcastle was the place to be in European, whether it was UEFA Cup or whether it was the Champions League. It was the one that you could always bank on to say, right, there's going to be a massive atmosphere. There's going to be a magic game. There's going to be fantastic performances. There's going to be goals. And Newcastle United were that team to do that over the years. And I think the media, as well as the fans, want that back. So definitely, if we could get a Europa Conference League, finish, that would be outstanding, mate. It really, really would. But there's a couple of really other good questions in there. Thank you for Leoness for that. We talked about that for a while. I'll put this to both of us. Mag Mark says, Maddison or Paqueta, you can only have one. Who's your pick? So, Richie, I'll come to you first. Who's your pick?
I know you were passing the book to me straight away there. Do you know what? It's both of them add so much to Newcastle, full stop. And I'll put this out straight away. I will be happy with either of them. I really would. There's the argument, and I know that I think we both commented on this on Kev Lawson's stats bomb picture of Maddison and Paqueta. And if you look at the actual stats, Paqueta was pretty much hands down bit better than what Maddison was. And then Kev had actually put down the controversial post was, I would still take Maddison due to Premier League experience. Now, I can see his point. The Premier League is a very, very hard league. Everybody looks at it as the best league in the world. You look at that Schumacher video the other day when they did the Gazzetta Italia, and he turned around and said one of the reasons why he wanted to play in the Premier League is because it's the best league in the world. It's the hardest league to work, and everybody wants to be in it. So from that, you can see his points in. Maddison's tried and tested. He knows what the league's about. He's up against the same opponents week in, week out. Now, the flip side is obviously Paqueta hasn't played in the Premier League. But then again, you've got to think that he's going to settle in straight away. He's got his best friend at the club who wasn't Premier League proven until the end of the season. And we've seen how well he's adapted. And I think when you're looking at players of that quality and ability, they can adapt to any league in the world. So for me, if I had a choice, and if we're talking about 50 million for Maddison or 50 million for Paqueta, I'd probably narrowly have to go with Paqueta.
Yeah. It's a tricky one. You're going for, they're both creative players, both players that can score goals. You can separate them into, if you buy Paqueta, you're getting goals and you're getting telepathy type of contributions with the likes of Bruno Guimaraes. Like Lee's talked about it before, that their understanding on the football pitch together in midfield was just unmatched. It was like telepathy, and that's why people talk about it. It is that good. So you're getting that understanding on the football pitch, which just takes you to another level. But then on the other side, you've got, as you've talked about, you've got Premier League experience, but you've also got extreme versatility and still being able to produce. And we talked about it earlier on in the show. The fact that Maddison can play right wing, he could play, in my opinion, he could play in that midfield three. He can play on the left, which is where he initially started for Leicester. And he can still produce moments. So you've got that you can kind of do. You can fit him into a team and still be successful with it. But you've got Paqueta where you put him in that midfield three and you know what you're getting from him and you know he's going to produce that quality. The interesting thing is how much either player's worth. There's been talk today on social media that Paqueta, we could get him for 40 million, no problem, this, that, and the other. I don't think it's as easy as that. I think they're around the same sort of price. I've got to be honest. And I think, we could quite easily be right now looking at a third bid for Paqueta and still having the same problem with Lyon. Lyon are very difficult negotiators, just like Leicester. We were lucky to get Bruno Guimaraes out of Lyon when we did in January for the price because they were desperate for money. I think if we were sitting in the summer now, I don't think we'd be getting Bruno Guimaraes for the price that we got him for, in my opinion. So it's a difficult situation. If I was to pick one, look, I'm going to go on the likelihood, not because I prefer this player over them. The likelihood is because we've got a second bid already in, and likely, Dom has put on there a third bid tomorrow for Maddison, according to Sean. He may have tweeted that out. We've been on the show tonight. We've got 365 watching, so thank you.
Yeah, he did have. I actually started in the chat for you. It's at the bottom.
Okay.
Simon put up there, third and final bid be presented for Maddison tomorrow. Leicester now open to spreading payments across 5 years, but still a slight gap in the valuation.
Okay. So, if that's the case, that's why I would probably edge towards Maddison, because he, at this moment in time, looks like the most likely to happen, because it seems like Eddie Howe has put all his eggs in that basket. And look, this is maybe for another discussion on another day, but it's very, very clear that Eddie Howe, and I talked to Fumby, was on the chat last night, and I had a conversation with Fumby about this on the Geordies Down South WhatsApp chat, is that it looks like that Eddie Howe is looking for a core English base of players. And this is why I think he's gone with Maddison ahead of Paqueta, because he wants not just Premier League experience, but he wants an English core of players. I think that's what he wants. It might not be what Steve Nixon wants in terms of who he's scouting, but it's what Eddie Howe wants. And I think this is why I think it might have been, and I don't know this for sure, but it seems to me, and Rich, come in with your opinion on this. It seems to me that it's got to a point in the window where they've gone and they've weighed up and maybe had a conversation with Dan Ashworth, Steve Nixon, and Eddie Howe around the table and gone, right, Paqueta, James Maddison, which one are we going for? Because they are similar players in some senses. And Eddie Howe's probably gone, well, he's got Premier League experience, he's English, he's going to be ready to hit the ground running in England. Let's go for him. And it seems like that's been the case, and that's why the two bids have come in. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
So the interesting point we haven't discussed is the fact that, Paqueta's, he's a Brazilian international, and, they're one of the best international sides in the world at the moment. So you've got to take that on merit, right? Now, I know this has been a discussion point. I think we've discussed it sometimes on other shows as well. James Maddison, he'll want to be going to that World Cup. And at the minute, he's been in and around the fringes with Leicester. If he came into Newcastle for me and he was a focal point, and with the people like the players that are going to be around him, he could make a serious push for the World Cup at Newcastle. So, that's a really great incentive for him to make the move. Now, there's a lot of professionals who've been having their say on this, on TalkSport, on Sky, and whatever, and said that Newcastle on either a sideways step, but going in the forward direction, or it's a forward move for them over Leicester now, because Leicester seem to be stagnating a little bit now, and as people have said, they need a rejig, they need to do a reshuffle and stuff like that. Whereas Paqueta, and this is the one thing that people, a few people have mentioned, is he wanting to risk coming to Newcastle and struggling to fit in for the first few months and potentially risk missing out on going to the World Cup? For me, I don't see that being an issue, and I think he would make the World Cup squad anyway. I think that point was more relevant for Diaby. And obviously, he had the Champions League football, which was a big selling point for staying at Leverkusen when we were toying up with going for that sort of bid that going forward. But it's a tough one. It really is. But the fact that I think if this third bid gets accepted, obviously we know it's going to be Maddison coming in. But it still wouldn't surprise me if they failed that we then didn't turn our attention to Paqueta. I can definitely see one of them wearing the black and white stripes next season.
Definitely. And look, in the chat, there's a lot of love for Lucas Paqueta. And look, we're not saying that we prefer him over Maddison. We're just going off what we think based on what's been happening in Newcastle transfer business. We're looking at the potentials. Like, there have been general links with Paqueta, but they've not been from Northeast journalists. They've all been from European side of things. And there's never been anything that we can hang our hat on to say that bid's coming in, that's going to happen. It just hasn't been the same. I mean, Michael Palmer has made a great point, to be fair. He's younger. Paqueta has got a higher ceiling, more versatile, full regular Brazilian international. You're absolutely right. And a few people have said the same. He is a tremendously talented player. But the reason why I personally said Maddison, and I think the reason why Richie's kind of made your points as well, is because I think we're almost looking at what Eddie Howe wants. And it looks like Eddie Howe is looking for that type of player, that England international, that England experience. Whether that's right or wrong, I have no idea. And there's been Marco Palmer again. Bruno had 0 Premier League experience. You're absolutely right. Aaron Robson said exactly the same. They didn't have any Premier League experience. You're absolutely right. Bruno didn't. But again, we're just going on what we think that Eddie Howe is looking at, and the reason why there's been 2 bids for Maddison and rumoured to be a third, and why there's been no bids, as far as we're aware, for Lucas Paqueta, and we think that's probably the reason why.
I'm sure. Did Sean not say that there was still something going on in the background with Paqueta today as well?
He did. He mentioned that there are still talks going on. There's a potential of a bid on the table coming soon. There is still interest in Paqueta. In an ideal world, I think if Newcastle had the money, they would sign both. Mm-hmm. There's a potential to play and sign Maddison and play him on the right, like we talked about tonight, and then play Lucas Paqueta within that midfield 3. And then you've got 2 extremely creative, talented players, and that would really seriously put us in the top 6 conversation. But I think we could, again, a separate conversation, Rich, but we could talk about FFP, and there are questions from some Newcastle fans today about why is there such an emphasis on FFP, this, that, and the other. The sponsorships and all the rest of it is a big thing at the moment. Newcastle are being watched very closely by the Premier League, more so than any other club. So this is why I think Newcastle are treading carefully. And this is why maybe we haven't gone a little bit gung-ho and gone, you know what, let's get Maddison, let's get Paqueta. You know what, let's get Tielemans, who's only got a year left on his contract. We haven't even talked about him tonight. Leicester know that they want rid of him because he's not going to sign a new deal there. And there's a potential to get someone like him, Harvey Barnes. This is why we haven't gone gung-ho, is because there are restraints that they're having to maintain, not because we can't afford them. We've got the money there to slap it down. We could pay 100 million transfer fee for a player if we wanted to. We could do a Grealish, but it's about fitting it into FFP. I don't know what you think. Do you agree with that, Rich?
Yeah, and I know a lot of people say the FFP is not much, but it is. It's unfortunately, as we said, we can't do Man City. These restrictions are in place. You've still got to manage the books, and yes, okay, we can still next year we will be able to continue spending because we should have a commercial, a big commercial income, and with potentially new sponsorship coming in, and everything else that's going forward. But someone put a good thing in on Twitter today. Says people have got to remember that the youth side of stuff, your training ground, your women's team, all that stuff's got to be taken into consideration now. For UEFA, for FFP now as well. It's not necessarily for the Premier League, but there's a lot of other things that aren't just to do with the men's and transfer fees. There's a lot that people have to take into consideration with FFP. And yes, Kieran Maguire, we've had him on numerous times on the show, and he's explained how much we could potentially spend. We could, but if things don't go right for it and go tits up, you can't then get to the point where, if you buy someone for 80 million and they absolutely flop, and you're then left with someone who's on high wages, you've broken your wage structure for someone to come in going forward. Does that, in Newcastle have a bad season? You could be, you'd already be thinking you end up like at Everton, for example, and stuff like that. You've got to do it the right way. And, if you turn around and say about spending 95 million in January and potentially spending over 200 million in the first two transfer windows, when we took over in October, would you have been happy with that, Pete? If I'd said to you, before the end of the transfer window, we'll have spent 200 million, would you be happy with that?
Yeah, definitely.
So it goes to show, do you know what I mean? I think this is where fans have got to realise and be realistic. Do you know what I mean? We're trying to get the right deals done. The ones that are make us going to progress, which aren't going to screw us over on a year-to-year basis. We can move players on next year. As I said, we're going to have a big commercial input coming in next summer as well, whether that be for new sponsor, whether they decide to ask us whether they want to do a naming rights, where it could be something like, I don't know, Saudi at St James's Park or whatever, or they decide to do naming rights on the training ground, or we get all the stuff that's going on in regards to Castor at the minute. And are we going to get a new manufacturing for our kits? And obviously, if we're going in the right direction as well, we can demand a higher kit sponsorship deal. Do you know what I mean? There's loads of going for it, but you've got to do it right. You've got to walk before you can run with this. And we've said it over and over again. But just going on to something, obviously, we've just been talking about Sean's comment before about Maddison tomorrow. He has actually just tweeted as well. From what he can gather, NUFC have three people working on 3 separate deals for attackers. Is it a case of getting the financials for all 3 and deciding which one, or sign all 3? He doesn't know. So we know he mentioned earlier today about Maddison, Paqueta, and obviously he said there's a third one there as well. That could take us on to something that's been linked with again today, with someone we've been linked with a few weeks ago, who it's gone quiet on the Newcastle side of things, but it's come about today that there's 3 teams interested in him. There's been talks to finalise a deal with Man United today, with Fabrizio Romano saying that Chelsea had a meeting with the agent of Benjamin Sesko last week. Man United have had a more direct meeting as well. Darby from Sky has also said this as well today about Benjamin Sesko. Discussions highlight the gap in the valuation, etc. But obviously, I think it was Romano said there's 3 people, 3 teams that are in for him. And obviously Newcastle inquired about a couple of weeks ago, so that's still believed to where the 3rd team for Benjamin Sesko. But what would you make on Newcastle potentially going back in for Benjamin Sesko? Have you seen much from Pete?
I'd seen a little bit of him beforehand, but look, I'm not going to be that guy that says, "Oh yeah, I watched him really closely. I know everything about him." I don't. But what I have seen of him, I like. I think there's a lot of raw attributes there that we could work with. He would, in my opinion, be the perfect striker to be someone that is brought in this season, developed and given opportunities to then be the guy maybe next season to be the main man. There are a lot of other clubs that feel the same way though. And this is where it's difficult. And this is where I think a deal will be done with Benjamin Sesko, in that I think if he's going to leave Salzburg, he's going to go to a team that are going to say, right, you're the man, you're going to play every week, because he's been told at Salzburg, with a couple of other players leaving, that he's going to be the main man this season and play every week. So he's not going to go somewhere after being told from Salzburg that he's going to play every week and go to somewhere where he's going to be a bit part player for another season and then be the main man. And I think that's where the difficulty is with the deal, and that's where I think why part of the reason why Newcastle not been mentioned. It's clear that Newcastle are interested in him.
His agent put the photographs out there last week.
Yeah,
he was in Newcastle last week. Like, was it last week or the week before?
Yeah, the week before. We talked about it on the Full Loaded Transfer Show. I think we had the pictures on there where he was in Newcastle, and I think it's clear that Newcastle are interested in him, which is fantastic that we're looking at a player like that. The one thing I say about Benjamin Sesko is that he has been, and I think Mark Douglas put a piece out today where he has been dubbed the new Haaland in terms of his ability. I see that in the way that he plays. The way that he plays, he's so dynamic. The way he runs is so powerful. He's a big, tall, physical striker. But the way he runs and the way he kind of scares defenders in his power, in his presence, is almost Haaland-like. He is like that. He's a good finisher. He knows where the goal is. He likes to be in and around sort of the 6-yard box, or anything between nine yards away from the goal. Anything that comes in, he wants to be in and around it. Good in the air. Physical, strong, that I've talked about. He has all the attributes to be a top player. The one
it's all about his development, isn't it? It's all about his development. And
it's about his development. But the one thing
because
go on. Sorry.
No, go on. You finish it off, mate.
The one thing I was going to say is that the one thing that worries me about that deal, and the reason why I'm maybe a little bit more pessimistic a bit going through, is that, you know, I think it was Mark Douglas in his piece that apparently Salzburg have put a £45 million valuation on him to Manchester United, who seem to be the most heavily linked to him at the moment, and having the most talks. Sky reported it today that they're in more intense talks compared to Chelsea and supposedly us, but I think it's us, the other third team. But 45 million for a 20-year-old that's only played a handful of games, it's a big valuation on a player. Like I said,
it's more valuation on potential, isn't it, rather than what he's immediately worth, isn't it? It's see, the thing is, for me, he goes to Man United or Chelsea, and as you said, he's not gonna. Yes, he'll develop by training with better players on a day-to-day basis, but he's not going to be necessarily on the pitch development, and it's a lot different from being in training and development with them than actually facing it in a competitive scenario week in, week out on the pitch. Whereas, you know, for me, I'd be looking at it. He'd be perfect for Newcastle to come in. He could be playing competitive football pretty much week in, week out, either with Wilson or instead of Wilson, or however, you know, it was decided that they wanted to use him. But you look at for me, the Newcastle are the option if he wasn't to stay at Salzburg, because at Salzburg, every other week he's going to be playing Champions League football. You know, he started the season off well. He scored in the opening the league game of the season for Salzburg. He then scored a pre-season friendly where they beat Liverpool 1-0 as well, when he scored the only goal of the game as well. So, and you know, he was over the moon scoring that goal as well, because it was against the defenders he needed to test himself with. You're not going to do that every single week staying in the Austrian Bundesliga. You need to test yourself and push yourself in further. You need to be doing week in, week out in the best league in the world, which we've already mentioned. And it's one of those things, again, which we've mentioned before, is the fact that it's this window. Is this the window where we need to get a deal done for him or miss out with him full stop? You know, we said this with Darwin Núñez going back in January. Newcastle had to get that deal done in January. If it got to the summer, there was no way we were going to be anywhere near him. And that was the case. As soon as you saw how he finished the season, and then you saw how he played against Liverpool, and that opened Klopp's eyes to what a great player that Darwin Núñez, and what we'd been singing praise about from January onwards. We knew he was never going to come to Newcastle once he'd had that game against Liverpool. We knew that was never going to be the case. So it's one of these where, is this the window when Newcastle can potentially get it done? Yes. If it gets to the stage where if he has a good Champions League campaign for Salzburg, you could potentially get him in the January window. But the further it goes down, and depending on obviously how our season goes, the chances of him coming to Newcastle probably could be less, unfortunately.
No, I think that's a fair point. 100%. I've got to be honest. I was on holiday and watched the back end of the Community Shield, and watching him score that third goal with Darwin Núñez. I kind of it cut through the heart a little bit, because we know his potential, and we were desperate for us to sign him even back in December, and it was really, really frustrating. But yeah, it's one of those things where a striker is a very, very difficult sign at the moment, because there are not many out there. There are not many out there of the level that the top teams want to sign. And in a different window, I think we would have signed Darwin Núñez. In a different window, we would have got a Sesko. In a different window, we'd have signed a number of other strikers. But because there are so little amount of top level strikers at this moment in time that are readily and available, I think this is where the likes of Man United are. I don't think Man United would have gone for a Sesko in any other window. I don't think Liverpool would have gone for a Darwin Núñez in any other window. I think this is where we're in a position where we've missed out because of the lack of quality strikers that
I think this is another reason why we were looking at players like Ekitike. And another link that I think we'll probably end up finishing the show on, because we've already gone over half an hour longer than we wanted to, and obviously we're conscious that Pete's only got one healthy ear at the minute as well, so we need to get that rested up. But I think we'll finish on this one, and that was another one that came about today, which was Arnold Calvert-Lewin from PSG. Now, we mentioned him a couple of weeks ago on for the transfer show, and I think Lee mentioned him being a really good player. He really, really liked him, but obviously with all the quality that he's got in front of him now at PSG, it looked like his future lies away from the French champions at the minute. But
Rich, I'm just going to stop you just for a second, just because I just had a fantastic, massive donation in from Noaf. Sparta, a fantastic donation there. It's close to a £500 donation, which is amazing. Wow. Thank you very, very much. Really, really appreciate that. Noaf, look, it's not the first time you've been on the channel. You put questions in the chat. You are a massive supporter of Loaded Mag NUFC. Really, really appreciate that. And you know what? That type of donation means that we have to stop the show to appreciate the support that you're giving us. That just allows us to do so much more and create so much more content that we've already created, and it allows us to grow as a channel. We are growing bit by bit. We are not too far away. We're moving nicely towards the 5K subscribers, and donations like that really, really help. So, Noaf, massive, massive thank you to you. Keep tuning into Loaded Mag NUFC. Keep supporting the channel. Like so many others, all the donations tonight mean the world to us. So thank you very, very much for that donation. It does mean a lot to us. I just wanted to just make that point.
No, rightfully so, Pete. It's as you said, it's not the first time that Noaf's done that, and it's a huge amount. And seriously, it's nice to think that he thinks our content's worth that. Do you know what I mean? We're just five dads talking about Newcastle. Do you know what I mean? And we've said that from the start. We do this because we love it, and it's nice that someone thinks we're worthy of that as a contribution. So it's much appreciated now. Every single, whether it's if we have something that's £2, someone becoming a member for one night, and every single little bit means so much to all five of us, so that's greatly, greatly appreciated. Now, often we never forget that sort of thing. That's one of the reasons why, as Pete said, we like to mention all the donations, every single one that comes about. You know, when there's more of us on, we try to get involved in the chat as well and stuff, and talk to you as well as we go on. Unfortunately, this type of show we can't, and obviously we go through the questions and stuff. But as I said, much appreciated now. So what I was going to say, we were talking about Callum Owendo there, and Media Foot had actually mentioned that Leeds had made an offer to PSG from 20 million euros. Obviously, Newcastle are still there, but Rennes, Lyon, and Milan were there too. So obviously, we'll finish up on this one because, as I mentioned, people, what's your thoughts on Callum Owendo? It goes on ideally what you were saying. We're in that market now because there's not that many quality proven strikers out there. We're looking around for the next ones who are proven strikers who have got so much potential, and this is where Callum Owendo fits in there.
It's an interesting one, actually. I was talking while we're on holiday. I was talking to Lee about Callum Owendo, and my nephew's nearly 17. He's getting into the media world, and he obviously quizzes my brother on French football. They travelled to PSG together and watch a lot of games. And we'll talk about Callum Owendo, and it's very, very clear that PSG want to move him on. They want to move him on. They need him kind of. Look, if Callum Owendo was going to have a future at PSG, they would have never signed Ekitike. They would have kept with Callum Owendo, not signed Ekitike. Ekitike would have been a Newcastle player now. That's as simple as that. So he will move on at some point in this window. He had a great spell at Lens, but I don't think, in my opinions, the links with Newcastle are strong enough. You know, I think there's already been a couple of bids from Leeds. I think Leeds are more likely ahead of us in the race for Callum Owendo to sign him. But he looks like a real talented player. He looks like a player that could light up the Premier League. He actually looks quite well suited to the Premier League. He's fast, he's skillful, he's got an eye for goal. He causes defenders problems. He doesn't stop. And in a fast-paced Premier League game or a fast-paced Premier League season, that's the type of striker that you need. That's the type of striker that causes problems for Premier League defences. And I think that he would be a great addition to the Premier League. And I think actually he would be a great stand-in for Callum Wilson. I really do. But I just haven't seen enough of the links with us to think that it's genuine. I could be wrong. I could be surprised. We were all surprised on Friday last week by the James Maddison bid, but I just haven't seen enough from us to suggest that he's the guy that we're hanging our hat on. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, just to go in, obviously, what we said about now a fantastic contribution. George Hayes, another fantastic donation there, mate.
What is going on? This is amazing.
I know it's as we said, it shocks every single one we get. It shocks us, you know what I mean, that you like our content that much that you would think to donate to the channel. And George, once again, not the first time you've done that. We appreciate every single donation that, whether you donate once or you donate regularly, every single one means so much to all of us. Seriously, words can't explain how much we appreciate all this. It doesn't mean a lot. Sorry, Pete, I forgot what you asked me there. I just obviously wanted to get it in for George because it's well worth the.
I agree. Thank you, George. Again, a massive contributor to the channel. Really appreciate everything that you've done and continue to do for Loaded Mag NUFC. It was just talk about Callum Owendo. Just saying that because Leeds have had a couple of bids in for Callum Owendo and they've been rejected, that it seems like they're more ahead of the race. There hasn't been anything concrete on Newcastle being linked, and that's why I tend to think that maybe that deal's not going to happen. I don't know what you think about
that. I sort of agree with you on that one. It could be one of those ones where he's in that small pool that Newcastle are looking at, but he could be the 5th or 6th choice in that small pool. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's other ones that you want to head and look to try and get over the line before you get down. But don't get me wrong, if he was a 5th or 6th in that pool that we're looking at, it's still a fantastic, fantastic addition to the squad. You know what I mean? For his potential that he's got as well, but also going forward as well. He's already an established French under-21 player as well, so he's got that potential to go forward and kick on. And there's quite a few, along with like Ekatike as well, who will be vying for that, to replace Benzema when he looks to hang up his boots in the next few years. So, it's one of those where you're right. I think because Leeds have been mentioned more, I think this is the second bid that they've potentially put in regard for him. Yes, you'd probably say they were ahead of them, and there was a very misleading, biased tweet from a Leeds account earlier today that mentioned that apparently he was looking more towards Leeds because he wasn't sold by the Newcastle project, and I just thought that was very, very tongue in cheek by the Leeds account. There's no way that he could be looking at the Leeds project being better than the Newcastle project on the. I don't know about you, Pete, but I wouldn't certainly be looking at Leeds project as being a better project than Newcastle's project.
The one thing I've had a few people say to me, "Oh, Leeds," with Battleground Europe, for example, there was a couple of people that messaged me and going, "Leeds, why not? Why are they not part of the conversation?" Well, for one, they had a horrendous back end of last season, and in my opinion, and I don't know what you think, Richard, I don't know what people in the chat think. They've spent over 100 million this summer and are no better off than what they were at the back end of last season. If you look at their squad, they've lost Rafinha, they've lost Phillips, their two most important players at their club. And yes, they've improved in terms of signing players, but those players are no better than what they lost.
Mm-hmm.
They're actually worse. And it could mean that the team improves, but for me, Newcastle squad's better than Leeds, and I don't see it. I just don't. That's just
I don't either. I don't either. I think it's chalk and cheese now. It's they're probably going to be hitting around the bottom half of the table. I think the lower end to the bottom half of the table. It was I was pleased they got out of it. I think Leeds are a proper club and they deserve to be in the Premier League. And it would have been a shame if they'd gone down. And I think a lot of it would have been down to the injuries that they suffered toward the end of the season. Because I think if you look at the amount of, I think they're pretty much the spine of the team had been out for the majority of the team. We've said this before. You take the spine out of any team and they're going to struggle. You take Bamford out, the main striker. You take out Calvin Phillips, who was their main midfielder, and you took out Liam Cooper. Right? Okay, he's probably not the best centre back in the Premier League. But he was probably their best centre back, and he was the captain and leader. So you take him out as well, and it's going to affect anyone. But I'm pleased they stayed in there. I've got a lot of fond memories of going to Leeds games, home and away. It's one of those ones where you enjoy going to, every season. So I like the fact that they're in the Premier League still. But projects, it's chalk and cheese project wise, and I just think that's gamesmanship by the Leeds account that I mentioned.
Yeah, I just wanted to finish on. I think it's really interesting, not Newcastle United related, but I think it's one for all Newcastle fans that are watching this chat at the moment. That if anyone's been watching the transfers over the course of today, there's been confirmation that Marc Cucurella is going to Chelsea, and there's even been a here we go in terms of the deals, and this is how quickly things move. Whilst we've been on air. Brighton have put a club statement out to say, contrary to inaccurate reports from numerous media outlets this evening, no agreement has been made with any club for Marc Cucurella. And I think that's important to remember that, sometimes, journalists and people can say things that we don't know that's actually true. So we need to make sure that we stay level-headed. We need to stay knowledgeable. We need to look around social media and sites and reputable people before we know that it's happening. And one thing that we've always said is that until they're wearing the shirt or holding the shirt outside St. James's or inside St. James's Park or outside the training ground, that a deal is not always done. And I think that Marc Cucurella link tonight kind of proves a lot. Now, obviously, we've had links with Maddison and various other players. Let's just wait and see. We can only give our opinion, and this is what me and Richie have been doing for the last hour and 45 minutes. We only said we're going to do an hour. We're doing 45 minutes on top of that. But it's been a great show, and it's been great to have you guys in the chat. great questions. So many we've not even got to, and we apologise for that. But fantastic talking points that we've been able to give you tonight. And we always make the point, it's our opinions. It's not fact. We don't know for sure. We use our knowledge of football, our knowledge of European football, our knowledge of playing and being involved in the game to know how things will move. It doesn't mean that it's the case. We're just fans like you. We're exactly like yourselves. We're just fans of the club. We love Newcastle. We love talking about it, and it's always a pleasure to share the platform with you guys in the chat. So just wanted to kind of end on that, I think. Yeah,
I think it's a perfect way to end. And I think the one thing we'll have to do before we finish the show is obviously, we've said a big thanks to the people in the chat who've contributed tonight and also for getting the questions. But I think we also need to give a huge shout out to our sponsors who stick by us every single week. And first, we've got a shout out to Simon and Shy Barnes. He does fantastic work for men's mental health. We're big advocates on this channel regards speaking out, and there's a few of us that know this firsthand and how important it is to a problem halved is a problem shared sort of thing. It's a big weight off your mind stuff. So he's got some fantastic gear on there. He's got the baseball caps, loads of different t-shirts, like Shy Ben's getting out. A lot of Geordies use that as a saying. You've got hoodies as well there, but he's also, Simon was great, fantastic enough to design the Loaded Mag, Don't Get Overloaded Mag NUFC t-shirt, where the profits are split with the Newcastle United Foundation as well, who obviously they've got the Be a Game Changer campaign in regards to mental health as well. So it's good to get that, that those profits go into what they're really worthwhile with cause. We've got pins and prints. You've got some fantastic, as we show every single night, when we do a show, the fantastic prints, Eddie Howe, Kieran Trippier, the shirt compilations as well. Also the goals, like we've got here, Bruno's debut goal against Southampton as well. But also they do the pin badges, which are all limited edition. You've got Ben Arthur, but there's also a Jonas Gutierrez one available as well. Our huge sponsorship with Retro NUFC memorabilia. They've had another huge drop this week as well. There's some fantastic NUFC quality retro gear from the 90s and the early 90s on there. They had a fantastic response when they went to the Timeout Market on Saturday before the Athletic game. And as he said, there's some fantastic gear that's just been dropped as well. Not just Newcastle stuff, some quality 90s and 90s international kits as well. And, like Serie A, Spanish Liga tops are there as well. For people who are football top collectors as well, not just Newcastle ones. So check them out. And also Martin and Machine House, our newest sponsor with their quality gear. Fantastic Machine House. They're a Newcastle-based company. We always like this to get behind our own, and we like our own people to succeed in the Northeast. So that's another thing that we want to shout out. And the quality of the clothing speaks for itself. It's got a fantastic range of t-shirts.
Brilliant.
They're really, really smart. The hoodies on there as well. The blue one that he just keeps tweeting out. They get it back in stock because it is the most popular item they've got on the site. But that's just 4 fantastic sponsors. All Newcastle related, or related to the channel, or related to the area. There's a link, and we're proud to have them on board because of there's the link to the Northeast and the club, as I've mentioned. But I think as Peter already mentioned, we're now 49 minutes over where we expected we were going to be. Go on. I
just wanted to say, just at this moment in time, there's 140 thumbs up in the chat now. Look, we've had pretty much 400 in the chat tonight at points in the show, watching this show. We've got 250 watching right now. If you can just, every single one of you, as we end the show, just click that thumbs up. It makes a massive difference to the channel. Let's get us way above 200. It means that more people can see this show and see other shows. It means that other people can subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, click that subscribe button. We are on the way to 5K and nicely moving towards that margin. But yeah, just if we can click those thumbs up on a regular, click that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. It makes a massive difference to us. So just on your way out, just do those 2 little things. And like I say, it makes a huge huge difference to the channel.
Yeah. Fantastic way to end the show. You know, as I said, we've overstayed our welcome a little bit, but when you have quality content to talk about, and you know, there's some fantastic questions coming from the viewers. You know, we've stayed on longer than we wanted to, but you know, we've kept on talking, and we've really enjoyed it. And we hope you have as well. We will be back in 24 hours' time, both myself and Pete, for another away days, the first proper away days of the season. And Pete, who have you got lined up for us for Forest?
We have obviously it's a new podcast that's going to be joining us, because Nottingham Forest obviously are brand new to the Premier League for such a long time, best part of 20 years. Mr. Dior, who's very well known within the podcasting world for Nottingham Forest. He's even, and we'll talk about it tomorrow, been to the training ground with the Nottingham Forest manager and got to meet him. So we'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. But Mr. Dior will be joining us to talk all things Nottingham Forest and Newcastle United and previewing the big game. Really, really looking forward to that. So looking at a 7:45 start. But we'll be getting right into all things away days, and we're bringing back a number of favourites to the show, like the tactics board and various other things with regards to that. So yeah, get ready to talk tactics and look forward to our first game of the season, which I'm absolutely buzzing for. And look, me and Richie will be there, and we'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow on Saturday. But yeah, buzzing for it. Can't wait. Away days, don't forget.
Yep. Don't forget, and once again, we don't forget any of the contributions you've made. Now, we appreciate all of them. That's not even just out, as I said, the smallest little contribution, but also the contribution in the chat as well, and the fact you've stayed watching the show. It's just me and Pete. There's no special guests tonight. It's just as it has been for the rest of this week. It's just been us lads, and so we appreciate that you stayed and watched. But we will leave it for now, and I'll see you all tomorrow. So from me, from Pete, good night.
Take care.